is Election Day, and there has been so much talk about voter intimidation leading into today's election. As someone who's been voting since I was 18 and here in the state of Michigan for the last 15 years plus, I never remember there being so much focus on voter intimidation. And of course, one of the big things coming out of this was Secretary of State Benson mandating that guns not be allowed at the polling locations to help avoid any type of voter intimidation. And to talk more with us about that is Terry Johnson. He is an attorney and also the VP of Legal Operations for Firearms Legal Protection. Terry, thanks for being with us on the Oakland County MegaCast.
Ronnie, thank you. And to Tyler as well, always a pleasure. And again, thanks for having me on.
Terry, I was trying to do some research and I did not find any cases, or definitely not any recent cases, of this being an issue of people bringing guns to the polling locations. Are you aware of any? Am I missing something here?
Well, when you say issues, I'm assuming you're referring to negative. Let me stop shaking my thing here. I'm assuming you're referring to negative issues. And no, there hasn't been. I mean, open carry at the polls has been happening for even before you were voting back, before you were 18, and it's never been an issue. However, I believe the Secretary of State and Attorney General are just trying to rally around something that just totally isn't there. And thank God the Court of Claims and the Court of Appeals agreed with us that this is just a issue that's just not there.
And for a lot of these locations, like if I go into a school, that's already an area that guns are prohibited, or churches. Well, a lot of these polling locations would already have mandates in place outside of it just being a polling location that guns aren't allowed.
Well, sure, but here's the issue, and people don't truly understand firearms laws. So, for example, while I can't conceal carry there, the only way I will actually be able to carry a firearm on those premises would be to open carry, and that's assuming I have a concealed carry permit. And once the government takes that building over for that time for the purposes of elections, it's no longer a school or a church. It is a actual government building. So you are allowed to carry into those facilities as long as you are open carrying.
Oh, see, that's why we have people such as yourself on the show to educate us a little bit more. But with that, if it was happening, let's say it was at a school and there are kids still in that school, would you be allowed to carry then?
Absolutely. I mean, police officers do it all the time. See a police officer get out of a police car, he or she is open carrying. And, anybody who says, oh my God, the kids are afraid. And it's like, I don't see them being afraid of police officers. Kids aren't taught to be afraid. Let me rephrase that. Kids aren't naturally afraid of an object. They're only taught to be afraid of an object.
Terry Johnson with us on the Oakland County MegaCast joining us today. So with that being the case, where open carry is permitted and voter intimidation is not something that we generally have seen as being a problem in the past or even currently necessarily a problem either, where is that line crossed so that those that are open carrying know what their limits are should they decide to open carry at the polls?
Well, it's not just the people who are open carrying firearms. I mean, voter intimidation comes in many forms. I mean, someone pulls out a knife and they utter the words, you better vote the way I tell you to vote. Is that voter intimidation? Absolutely. Somebody pulls out, a baseball bat and starts swinging it around and says the exact same words. Is that voter intimidation? Yes. So when we make these statements about, what line do firearms owners have to cross, it's not just firearms owners. It is about everybody that goes into that polling place to vote. Voter intimidation is against the law, regardless if you use a gun, a 2x4, a baseball bat, or a knife.
So the judge did strike down Benson's order banning the open carry of guns at the Michigan polling locations. It's now sitting with the Michigan Supreme Court. They have
Correct.
not made a decision yet, even though the Dana Nessel did request that they come back with a decision prior to today. What do you think the delay is? Or is it just one of those things where they're taking it based on their own schedule?
Well, it's the Supreme Court, and we can't rush the Supreme Court. When we filed this initially, and let's be fair in all of this, Jocelyn Benson, the Secretary of State, filed it at the last minute. Had Jocelyn Benson followed the rules of the APA and gone down the proper route, this could have been talked about, dealt with, and potentially handled. Instead, they wait till the last minute and they use tactics like, it's just really amazing to hear the Attorney General talk about the governor was kidnapped and they used guns. We need to ban guns from voting places. Well, guess what? Or I'm sorry, attempted kidnapping. But here's the other part. They also use cars. So should we stop people from driving to the polls? It made absolutely no sense whatsoever. And what allegedly happened to the governor or was going to happen to the governor has no bearing on the electorate as a whole.
Terry Johnson with us here on the Oakland County MegaCast. He is an attorney and the VP of Legal Operations for Firearms Legal Protection. And with that, Terry, I know that you are very well educated in the firearms laws. In fact, I took a CPL class, and you did the legal portion of that class. It's one of the ways I came to know you. I will say I took the class, but Terry, don't get mad at me. I never actually went and got my license, but I did sit through the class.
That's okay.
It was really part of my education into the firearms industry, and knowing that. Obviously, the other big topic is about banning guns at the state capitol. Your thoughts on that?
Well, the funny thing is, I love how people make the argument, oh my God, they stormed the Capitol with guns. But if you go back and you look at the things that have been going on, not a single window was broken, not a single dollar's worth of damage happened when the armed protesters went up to Lansing. But let's look at some of the other protests that have taken place where guns haven't been. What do you see? You see people breaking out windows. You see people looting. You see people stealing. But yet again, just because someone has a different object in their hand, we want to crucify those who are carrying that. So people are carrying bricks. Should we ban bricks from the Capitol? Should we ban other things where people are breaking windows out? It just makes absolutely no sense what we're trying to do by trying to demonize an object.
There are always two sides to every argument, and you see both sides when it comes to firearms. And one thing I learned while working for ATF, this is a very highly debatable issue on both sides of the aisle. And because of that, it makes it such a hot button topic where it seems like no clear-cut decisions are ever made. The firearms laws between state and federal can be so gray. How is it that if someone is debating about whether or not purchasing their firearms or not, because sales are up right now prior to the election, and what is the best way for an individual to get educated on the laws, because there is a lot of gray area?
Well, there are, and the best way is to do some research. I would, look at companies such as Firearms Legal Protection, and some of the other companies that are out there who basically want to protect those people who are protecting themselves. I would not get information from, let's say, Google or my neighbor down the street or my local law enforcement officer. And it's nothing against law enforcement officers. They don't know the law the way attorneys and other folks do know the laws. Take a class, a concealed pistol license class. There are ways to understand the laws that are out there. One of the big things, though, Ronnie, that really gets me when we talk about the firearms laws, if you ever notice, people never want to add to them. They always want to take away. So when you come to the table to discuss, it's always one side that says, well, in order to move this forward, we got to take away this, take away that. But I never have ever seen us sit down and say, why don't we add some things to the firearms laws? It's always contentious from that standpoint, as you mentioned earlier.
Terry Johnson here with us on the Oakland County MegaCast. We're running a little bit behind, but before we let you go, anything that you want to talk about that maybe we didn't ask you about?
You know, the main thing I really want to talk about, just briefly, everybody looked at this gun ban that the Secretary of State and Attorney General put forward. The Court of Appeals, I'm sorry, the Court of Claims and the Court of Appeals, this really had nothing to do with firearms. This, again, was just an overreach of authority by the Secretary of State, promoted by the Attorney General. And again, when you send a brief to the to the Michigan Supreme Court, and you start citing polls, what people want in polls, we don't govern by polls. We govern by the law. And I would just ask our elected officials to make sure in the future, as they promote things, let's just follow the law and what the law says.
Yeah, I'm really surprised at some of the things that have happened. Not only, this mandate from the Secretary of State's office that was then overturned, but also the governor with her executive orders, which also got overturned. And, I'm just surprised from the state of Michigan on that higher up level that they're not having more discussions when they do these things, because they know they're going to be challenged in a court of law. And I believe it was Robert Davis that brought the suit against the Benson's office on this one. Robert Davis is well known for his lawsuits. He's a former
He
Highland
brought
Park.
one and we brought one.
Oh, you
Yes.
brought one as well? And
Right. Michigan Open Carry and all the gun rights groups came together. Michigan Open Carry, Michigan Gun Owners, and Michigan Coalition for Responsible Gun Owners. So we were part of that second suit.
So, and with that, most people are asking, why do you need a gun to go vote?
Why do you need a gun to go vote?
Yeah, so, a lot of people are saying when this first came out, it's like, well, why would you take a gun to go vote anyway? So what's your response to people like that?
Well, that's an interesting question. The question is, why wouldn't you? I mean, do you know when someone's going to attack you? I mean, let's think about what's going on. There's voter intimidation. There are people that are doing everything out here. And I think people also have a fundamental right to be safe. And if I can be safe by whether I have pepper spray, whether I have a knife, whether I have a firearm, why not? Why I have a right to be safe. And you know what? When you need a police officer in the moments ahead, they're only minutes away. Think about that.
Terry Johnson with us here on the Oakland County MegaCast. Thank you for being with us, taking time out of your schedule, as well as educating us on the firearms laws, because it can get a little gray for so many of us. And so we appreciate your time and your insight and your expertise.
Thank you for having me on. And last thing I want to say is to everybody, please go vote today. Your vote does matter.